I remember the exact moment I stopped being surprised by anything my family did. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late October, and I was standing in what used to be my childhood bedroom, watching my mother hand my younger brother the keys to my car. Not a new car. My car. The one I'd paid for with my own money, the one I'd driven for 7 years, the one that still had my registration in the glove compartment. She gave it to him like it was a spare set of towels from the linen closet. "I figured you wouldn't mind," she said, not even looking at me. "You're doing well now. You can afford something newer. Derek needs reliable transportation for his new job." Derek had been out of a job for 18 months. He'd been fired from 3 different places in 2 years. The new job was part-time at a tire shop, 20 hours a week if he showed up, which he usually didn't. But in my mother's eyes, Derek needed everything, and I needed nothing. That afternoon set off a chain of events that would cost my family almost everything they had. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand what happened, you need to understand how I got to that room in the first place, and how long I'd been the overlooked son. I'm the older brother by 4 years. Derek was the baby, the surprise, the one who came along when my parents had already settled into the rhythm of raising one child and thought they were done. My father was a foreman at a manufacturing plant, and my mother worked part-time at a dentist's office. They weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. My childhood was fine, I guess. Not perfect, but fine. Except for one thing that became clearer and clearer as we got older: Derek could do no wrong. He was the charming one, the one with the easy smile, the one who could talk his way out of anything. I was the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who did his homework without being asked and got a job at 16 because I wanted to pay for my own things. My parents saw Derek as someone who needed protection, and they saw me as someone who would always be fine on my own. I was always fine on my own. That was the problem. When Derek was 16, he wrecked my father's truck. Totaled it. Drunk driving. My father paid for the damage, paid the legal fees, and bought Derek a used sedan. I got a lecture about making better choices when I came home 30 minutes past curfew at 17. The math never added up. By the time I was 23, I'd graduated from state college with a degree in accounting, gotten a job at a mid-sized firm, and was saving for a down payment on my first house. I was paying my own rent, my own insurance, my own student loans. I wasn't rich, but I was making it work. I was proud of myself, even if nobody in my family seemed particularly impressed. Derek had dropped out of community college after 1 semester, bounced through a series of low-paying jobs, and lived in the basement apartment my parents had converted for him. He paid no rent. He contributed nothing. But he was still the one they worried about, the one they celebrated when he managed to hold a job for 6 months, the one they praised for being so good with people. I got used to it. You learn to accept the shape of your family, even when it hurts. You tell yourself it doesn't matter, that you're the responsible one, the independent one, the one who can stand on his own. You tell yourself that being overlooked means you're strong enough to handle it. But it still hurts. It just hurts in a quiet way, a way that doesn't show up on the outside. When I met Sarah, I thought I'd finally found someone who saw me. She was a graphic designer, bright and ambitious, and she made me feel like I mattered. We dated for 2 years before I proposed, and I honestly believed I'd found my partner for life. Her family had money, old money from a real estate development company, and they were polite enough to my face. But I always sensed they thought I was beneath them. I was an accountant. I was solid, reliable, but not flashy. Not one of them. Sarah's father, Robert, was particularly skilled at making me feel small. He'd ask about my job with a tone that suggested he was humoring me, nod along to my answers, and then pivot to talk about the real business world. At dinner parties at their house, he'd introduce me as Sarah's fiancé, the accountant, as if that was the most interesting thing about me. Sarah used to defend me in private, tell me her father was just old-fashioned, that he'd come around once we were married. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. I was already so used to being the one who had to prove himself, who had to earn his place, that I just nodded and kept working harder. Our wedding was in June. Her mother, Catherine, spent most of the planning process talking about how unusual it was for the bride's family to pay for everything, and how they were making an exception because they understood our financial circumstances. I offered to contribute, I offered to pay for parts of it, but they waved me off with this condescending generosity that made me feel more indebted than grateful. I had savings, I could have helped. But they insisted, and I thought, maybe this is just how they show they accept me. After the wedding, Sarah and I moved into a modest 2-bedroom house I'd managed to buy on my own. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I'd worked for that house, saved for it, sacrificed for it. Sarah contributed to the bills and paid for some renovations, but the mortgage was in my name. I was proud of that. I thought it was the foundation of a good life. My mother, meanwhile, had decided Derek needed help. He was approaching 30 and still living in her basement, still drifting from job to job, still drinking too much and making bad decisions. So she came to me with a plan. She wanted to sell the family home, the one I grew up in, and move into something smaller. The profit from the sale would give her and my father a comfortable retirement fund, and she wanted to use some of it to get Derek on his feet. Derek needs a fresh start, she told me over the phone one afternoon. I'm going to give him the down payment on a condo. It's not much, but it will give him stability. Mom, he's not going to keep a condo. He can't even hold a job. Don't be so hard on him. He's been through a lot. What exactly has he been through? Your father and I have decided. It's our money. That was how it always ended. It was their money, their decision, their golden child who could do no wrong. I'd learned not to fight it. Fighting it only made me look bitter, jealous, like the older brother who resented his younger sibling. I was the one with the stable job, the marriage, the house. I was supposed to be fine with it all. Derek never got the condo. What he got instead was a new car, a high-end SUV that my mother co-signed for because he had no credit and no income to speak of. And he got the down payment money, but instead of putting it toward a condo, he put it toward a business opportunity that turned out to be a pyramid scheme. At least he's trying, my mother said. That was the theme of my life. At least he's trying. I could rebuild an engine in a weekend, and nobody noticed. Derek could show up for work on time twice in a row, and it was cause for celebration. The Tuesday afternoon in October started like any other day. I'd taken off work to help my mother with some paperwork for the family home sale. My father had passed away 2 years earlier, and my mother had finally decided to downsize. I was the executor of the estate, the responsible one, the one who handled the details. Derek was, of course, not involved. I pulled into the driveway and walked through the front door. The house smelled the same as it always had, a mix of furniture polish and something my mother was cooking. I called out to her and heard her voice from upstairs. "I'm in your old room," she said. When I got to the top of the stairs, I saw what she was doing. The room had been cleared out, all my old things boxed up and stacked in the hallway. Derek was standing in the center of the room with a grin on his face that I knew too well. It was the grin of someone who had just gotten something he didn't deserve. "Mom's letting me have the room," he said. "For when I visit. I'm going to make it into a guest suite." "Visiting what? You live here?" "Yeah, well, Mom's selling the house, so I'm moving out." But this will be my room when I come back to visit. I looked at my mother. She was folding one of the bed sheets I'd had since high school, the ones with the faded plaid pattern. What are you doing with my things? Oh, I packed them up. They're in the hallway. You can take them with you. The sheets? Well, I figured Derek could use them. He doesn't have much. Derek doesn't have much because he's never worked for it. Don't start, Daniel. I don't want you two fighting. I'm not fighting. I'm asking why my childhood room is being handed to him without anyone even telling me. She stopped folding and looked at me. Her expression was that familiar one, the one that said I was being difficult, being a problem, causing trouble when she was trying to do something nice. Your father and I always said this room would be yours, she said slowly. But you have a house now. You don't need it. Derek is going through a transition, and I thought it would be nice. I stood there, looking at the room I'd grown up in, the room where I'd done my homework, where I'd dreamed about the future, where I'd come home from college and felt like I still belonged. And now my mother was giving it to the brother who'd never earned a thing in his life. That's not the only thing, she said, reaching into her pocket. I also have the keys to your car. Derek needs something reliable for his new job. Mom, that's my car. I paid for it. I've been driving it for 7 years. You're doing well now, Daniel. You make good money. You can get something new. Derek just needs a hand up. She's just helping me out, Derek said, his tone smug. You don't mind, do you? I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was something colder, more final. It was the recognition that I would never be seen in my family, not as someone who mattered, not as someone whose needs were worth considering. I would always be the one who was doing well enough to give. Fine, I said. Take the car. I'll go buy a new one. I'll take my things and leave. Thank you, sweetheart, my mother said, smiling now. I knew you'd understand. I walked out to the garage and opened the door. Derek's car was sitting in the driveway, and I could see his belongings scattered in the back seat. My car was parked next to a pile of boxes, and I opened the trunk to see it was already full of his stuff. He's already moved your stuff out, I said, turning to my mother. He put it in the trunk. Well, the car is his now. He needed to bring some things to the new apartment. I got in my car, the car I'd driven for 7 years, the car I'd paid for with my own money, and I drove away. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there. The new car I bought was a used sedan, nothing flashy, but it was mine. I didn't tell Sarah about what had happened. I was embarrassed, I think. Embarrassed that my mother had given away something of mine like I was a child, embarrassed that my brother was still taking things from me even at our age, embarrassed that I'd just let it happen. Sarah had her own issues with my family. She'd come to a few family dinners and had seen the dynamic, the way my mother deferred to Derek, the way my father had always seemed disappointed in me even though I'd done everything right. She'd tried to talk to me about it, tried to get me to confront them, but I always brushed it off. It was easier to just accept it than to fight it. I don't understand why you let them treat you like this, she'd said one night after a particularly tense dinner. Because I don't need their approval. Clearly you do. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to admit that her diagnosis of my family was accurate. I'd been told my whole life that I was the one who didn't need help, who didn't need support, who could stand on his own. And I'd internalized it. I'd made it my identity. I didn't ask for help because asking for help meant admitting I wasn't strong enough to handle things on my own. But the truth was, I was tired. Tired of being the one who gave. Tired of being the one who was fine. Tired of watching Derek get everything while I worked for every single thing I had. A few weeks after the car incident, I found out that my mother had taken Derek's name off the title of the SUV and put mine on it. She'd done it to lower the insurance, or so she said. Derek couldn't afford the insurance on the SUV, and my mother was trying to save him money. In exchange for putting my name on the loan, she'd promised to pay the premiums. I should have said no. I should have seen what was coming. The first missed payment came 2 months later. I got a call from the bank telling me that the insurance was due and had not been paid. I called my mother, and she apologized profusely, telling me she'd forgotten. She'd send a check. I'd get a check for the overdue amount. Then there was the property tax issue. Derek's condo, the one he'd bought with my parents' money, was apparently in arrears. My mother had been paying the taxes for him because he couldn't afford them. When she decided to sell the family home, the deal was that she would have enough money to cover the taxes and some other debts. But there was a problem. The sale was delayed, and Derek's taxes were about to become a lien on the property. "Derek is going to lose the condo," my mother said to me over the phone, her voice thick with worry. "I can't let that happen. He's come so far." "So far?" "He's 32 years old and lives in a condo you bought for him." "You have the money," she said. "I know you have savings. Just this once, lend him the money for the taxes. I'll pay you back when the house sells." "How much?" $15,000. $15,000? Mom, that's almost everything I have in savings." "You'll get it back," she said. "It's a loan. I didn't lend him the money. I wanted to. I wanted to keep the peace, to be the good son, to prove that I was someone who helped family when they needed it. But something in me had shifted. That moment in my childhood bedroom, the moment my mother handed my car to my brother like I was already gone, had changed something. I was starting to see things more clearly. When I told my mother I couldn't lend him the money, she was disappointed. It was the same old story. I was the one with the stable job, the one who could afford to help. Why was I being so selfish? A few weeks after that, Sarah and I had a conversation that would change everything. We were sitting in our living room, and she was looking at a final bill for the condo taxes, the bill I'd refused to pay. "I talked to your mother today," Sarah said. "She called to ask me to convince you to help Derek. She says he's going to lose everything." "Then he loses everything. He's your brother. He's family." "He's never been family to me," I said. "He's been the one who takes while I give. Mom has always given him everything, and I've been the one who pays for it." "Not anymore." Sarah shook her head. "I don't understand why you're so bitter about this. Your mother just loves him, that's all. My mother gave away my car. She gave away my room. She's been treating me like an ATM my whole life, and you're telling me I'm bitter because she's just a loving mother." "This is exactly what I'm talking about," Sarah said. "You have this chip on your shoulder about your family, and you can't let it go. Your father died, and you've never dealt with it. Your mother is going through the sale of the house, and she needs your help. But all you can think about is yourself." Her voice was soft, but the words cut deep. For a moment, I questioned myself. Was I being unreasonable? Was I so caught up in my own sense of injustice that I couldn't see the bigger picture? I'd spent my whole life being told I was too sensitive, too angry, too hard on Derek. Maybe it was true. Maybe I needed to let it go. I was alone with my thoughts in the kitchen later that night, making myself a cup of tea, when I realized something. Sarah had talked to my mother. She'd talked to my mother about me, behind my back. She'd been keeping secrets, coordinating with the very people who had made me feel invisible my entire life. "Hey," I said, walking back into the living room. When did you talk to my mother? What? Today. When did she call? Earlier this afternoon, Sarah said, not meeting my eyes. What else did you two talk about? Just the taxes. She's worried about Derek. Did she ask you to talk to me about anything else? Did she tell you that she put my name on the title of Derek's SUV? Did she tell you about the insurance payments? Sarah hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. Did she tell you about my car? I asked. The one she gave to Derek. She mentioned it, Sarah said quietly. She mentioned it? And you think I'm being unreasonable? I think you're obsessed with this, Daniel. It's been years of you carrying this grudge, and I can't talk to you about anything without it turning into a conversation about how your family has wronged you. We're married, I said. We're supposed to be partners. But you're talking to my mother behind my back, and you're keeping things from me. I'm not keeping things from you. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to get you to see that your mother and brother aren't the villains you think they are. You just called my mother. You told her I was bitter. You told her I needed to get over it. And you did it without telling me anything. Sarah sighed. She looked tired. Maybe this had been building longer than I'd realized. Maybe I'd been so consumed by my family drama that I'd missed the signs in my own marriage. Daniel, she said, I love you. I do. But I can't keep living like this. Every time your family comes up, we fight. Every time you have to make a decision about them, you get angry and cold. I can't be the one who has to deal with that for the rest of my life. You're saying you want to leave. I'm saying I need you to choose. Your family, or this marriage. Because I can't live with you constantly resenting everyone who tries to help you. It was the ultimatum I'd been afraid of. Sarah was right, on some level. I was angry. I was bitter. I was carrying a resentment that had been building for 30 years. But I wasn't wrong. My mother had always favored Derek, and Sarah had just proven that she didn't understand the depth of it. She'd talked to my mother about me, about my grudge, without ever really trying to see things from my side. The next few weeks were a blur of tense conversations and sleepless nights. Sarah and I tried to work through things. I agreed to see a therapist, and she agreed to stop talking to my mother about our personal issues. We were trying. But the trust that had once been there felt thin, fragile, like something that could shatter at any moment. On the surface, things got better. But underneath, something was shifting. My mother, I began to notice, was increasingly interested in Sarah. She'd invite her to lunch, offer to spend time together, and suddenly my wife was becoming part of the family I'd been shut out of. Meanwhile, I was on the outside, watching the two women in my life get closer and closer. A few months after our conversation, Sarah came home from one of her lunches with my mother. She looked happy, lighter than she'd been in weeks. She walked into the kitchen and set down a stack of papers. Your mother gave me these, she said. She wants to talk to us about something. I picked up the papers and scanned them. The sale of the family home was going through, and my mother had decided to give me a small portion of the proceeds. It wasn't much, maybe enough to fix the roof on my house. But there was a catch, of course. The money was contingent on me signing a release saying I wouldn't contest the sale. Why do I need to sign a release? I asked. Your mother wants things settled. She's worried about Derek, and she wants to make sure there's nothing that could hold up the sale. The sale of the home where I grew up, and she wants me to sign away any claim. We're a family, Sarah said. We trust each other. She was right, of course. I should have trusted my mother. I should have signed the release and taken the money. but something didn't feel right. The same cold feeling I'd felt in my childhood bedroom was back, telling me to pay attention. I went over to my mother's house the next day. The house was mostly empty, stripped of the furniture and memories that had filled it for 40 years. Boxes were stacked in the corners, and my mother was in the kitchen, sorting through old dishes. "Daniel," she said, looking surprised. "I didn't expect you." "I need to talk to you about the release," I said. "Why do I need to sign it?" She sighed, that familiar sigh of patience with a difficult child. "Because the sale is complicated, Daniel. I have to make sure everything is in order. You and Derek both need to sign." "Why? What does signing a release do?" "It just says you won't contest the sale. It's standard." I looked at her. She'd never been a good liar, but she'd always had this ability to act like she was telling the truth. It was the same look she'd given me when she'd told me Derek needed the car, the same look she'd given me when she'd explained why my brother needed my help with the taxes. I was supposed to trust her. "I want to see the closing documents," I said. "There are no closing documents yet. The sale hasn't gone through. The release is for after." "Then I'll wait." "Daniel." "Mom, I want to see the documents. The final sale documents. I want to see what's actually happening with this house." She looked at me with frustration. "I don't have them yet. The lawyers haven't finished." "Then I'm not signing anything." "You're being paranoid," she said. "This is your family, your home. Why can't you just trust me?" The next day, I got a call from the lawyer handling the estate. He was the same lawyer who'd worked with my father, a man I barely knew. But when he called, he didn't sound like he was calling about a routine matter. He sounded serious. "Daniel, I need to speak with you. Are you free to come to my office this afternoon?" "What's this about?" "I think it's better if we talk in person. Your mother has asked me to prepare some documents, and there are some discrepancies." An hour later, I was sitting in the lawyer's office, looking at documents that made my blood run cold. The sale of my parents' house wasn't going to generate the money my mother had told me. The house was being sold at a loss, and all the proceeds were being used to pay off Derek's debts. The SUV I'd been told was simply listed in my name. It was in my name. I was liable for the payments, and the payments were in default. The property taxes on the condo? They'd been reassessed, and the lien was about to attach to my mother's house, threatening the sale. But the worst discovery came when the lawyer pulled out another document. He'd been going through the estate files, trying to sort out a title issue, when he'd found something my mother had forgotten. An old property deed. It was dated years ago, before my parents had ever talked about selling the house, and it had my name on it. My father had put a chunk of the land in my name. It was a legacy, a piece of the family home that he'd wanted me to have. The lawyer looked at me gravely. "Your mother is trying to sell the whole property, Daniel. She's in the process of signing the papers right now. If she goes through with it, this deed becomes worthless. Your father's gift to you will disappear." I sat there, staring at the paper. My father had never told me about this. He'd never told anyone, apparently. It was a secret he'd taken to his grave, a bequest meant only for me. "Does my mother know about this?" I asked. "I don't believe so," the lawyer said. "I found it in a separate file. It appears your father kept it separate from the estate. It's not in the probate records." "Why would he do that?" "I don't know, Daniel. But I do know this: if you don't act fast, the sale will go through, and the property will be gone." I went home that night in a state of shock. My father, the man who had never been demonstrative with his love, who had never told me he was proud of me, had left me a piece of his legacy. And now my mother, in her determination to save Derek, was about to sell it all out from under me. Sarah was on the phone when I got home. She was talking to someone, her voice animated and bright, and I realized with a jolt that she was talking to my mother. I stood there for a moment, listening, as she made plans to go to another lunch, to discuss something about the property sale. When she hung up, I saw her expression shift. She looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Not love, not concern. A calculation. What was that about? I asked. My mother's office, I said slowly. Did you just call my mother's office? Daniel, why are you being so paranoid? I'm not being paranoid, I said. I'm being careful. Your mother is trying to sell the house out from under me. She's giving everything to Derek, and she's been lying to me about it. I don't believe you. It's true. The lawyer called me today. He found a deed my father left me. It's a piece of the property. My mother is trying to sell it without telling me. Sarah stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Why would your mother do that? Because she's always favored Derek, I said. And now she's being forced to liquidate everything to save him. The argument that followed was the worst of our marriage. Sarah accused me of being paranoid, of reading into everything, of making my family into villains. I accused her of being in league with my mother, of stealing my legacy. It was ugly. We both said terrible things. And by the end, I realized something I'd never admitted to myself before: Sarah would never be on my side. She'd always been with my mother, and I'd been too blind to see it. The next morning, I took action. I called the lawyer and told him I was going to contest the sale. I found out that the property taxes had been reassessed, and there was a lien about to attach to the house. I realized I could use the lien as leverage. If I didn't resolve it, the sale would be held up. My mother would have to come to me for help. Over the next few weeks, I pieced together the full picture. My mother had been draining the accounts meant for the sale to pay off Derek's debts. The condo, the car payments, the taxes they'd been piling up for months, and she'd been hiding it from everyone. The sale of the house was supposed to wipe the slate clean, but the money wasn't going to go to her retirement. It was going to Derek's mistakes. I could have let it all collapse. I could have walked away, let the sale fail, let my mother and Derek face the consequences of their own choices. But something in me couldn't do it. Not because I cared about them, but because I remembered my father's legacy. He'd meant for me to have something, and I wasn't going to let it be destroyed by my brother's selfishness. I went to my mother's house one evening, the documents the lawyer had given me in my hand. She was sitting in the living room, surrounded by half-packed boxes, looking more tired than I'd ever seen her. "Daniel," she said, not looking up. "What do you want?" "I want to talk about the house," I said. "It's being sold." "You know that." "Not if I don't sign the release." "You'll sign it," she said. "You've always done what's right." "Not this time." "I know about the deed, Mom. I know Dad left me part of this property. I know you've been hiding it from me." She looked up at me, her face pale. "The deed? I thought Derek told you about that." "Derek? Why would Derek tell me anything? He didn't even know about it." "Well, I didn't think you'd want it," she said, her voice wavering. "You have a house of your own. You don't need this property." "It's not about what I need. It's about what Dad wanted. He was old," she said. "He didn't know what he was doing." "Don't." My voice was sharp, and she fell silent. "Don't you dare say that about Dad. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted to leave me something, and you decided to take it away because Derek needs help. Again. She didn't argue. She just sat there, staring at the floor. If you don't tell the buyers about the deed, I said, I'm going to file a caveat. I'll hold up the sale, and I'll force you to deal with me. The lien on the property will become public, and the buyers will walk away. The sale will collapse. You wouldn't do that. I would. And I think you know it. She finally looked up at me, and I saw the truth in her eyes. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She knew I'd had enough. I didn't want it to be this way, she said quietly. I was just trying to help your brother. I know, I said. But you're destroying everything else to do it. And I'm done letting you sacrifice me for him. I got the property back. It wasn't a win, not really. It was a stay of execution. The house sale was postponed, the property was reassessed, and the lawyers began the work of untangling the mess my mother had created. I had a legal claim to the land, and I was going to hold onto it. My mother was furious, of course. She accused me of betraying the family. Derek called me names I won't repeat. But I didn't care. I was done trying to be the son who always gave. I also started the process of divorcing Sarah. The legal separation was ugly, but I didn't have to fight her for anything. The house was mine, bought and paid for before we were married. She'd contributed to the renovations, but she didn't have a claim to the property itself. She moved out, taking most of the furniture and the things she'd brought into the marriage. The divorce was finalized a year later. It was one of the hardest things I've ever gone through, but I needed to do it. I needed to be free of the people who saw me only as a means to an end. The aftermath of all this was a process of reconciliation. I had to face what I'd done and what I'd lost. My mother and I eventually had a long conversation, one of the most honest we'd ever had. She admitted that she'd always favored Derek, not because she loved him more, but because she was afraid he wouldn't make it. She'd poured everything into him because she thought he needed her, while I'd always been the one who could take care of myself. She hadn't realized how much that had cost me. I'm sorry, she told me. For all of it? For the car, for the room, for putting your name on the loan, for trying to sell the property out from under you. I was trying to save him, and I didn't see what I was doing to you. I listened. It was all I could do. The anger was still there, but it was quieter now. It had been buried under the weight of everything else. I went to my father's grave the day after the house sale finally went through. I sat there, looking at his headstone, and I told him about the deed. I told him about the property I'd saved, the piece of his legacy that I'd kept. I told him I was sorry it had come to this, but I hoped he understood. I kept the property. I built a small cabin on it, a place where I could go to remember my father and what he'd meant to me. I rebuilt my relationship with my mother, on my own terms. We see each other occasionally, and it's still a little awkward, but the boundaries are clear. Derek, last I heard, is in some legal trouble. I don't know the details, and I don't ask. He's not part of my life anymore, and I'm okay with that. Sarah eventually remarried, and she seems happy. I'm happy for her. The divorce taught me a lot about what I wanted and needed from a partner. I haven't found that person yet, but I'm not rushing to find her. The big lesson I learned from all of this is that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who sees you, who values you. My mother and father gave me a legacy, but it was my father's small, secret gift that really mattered to me, not just the property, but the fact that he'd thought of me, that he'd wanted to leave me something that was just for me. I don't have a lot of regrets, except that I let things get as bad as they did. I should have spoken up earlier, should have set boundaries, Should have told my mother and brother the truth about how they were making me feel. But I was so used to being the one who handled everything quietly that I didn't know how to do anything else. Now I'm learning. I'm learning that it's okay to speak up, okay to say what I need, okay to put myself first. It's a slow process, and some days are harder than others. But I'm getting there. I'm still in that same house, the one I bought when I was still married. It's smaller than I'd like, and the renovation I was planning to save for is still on hold, but it's mine. I own it free and clear, and every morning when I wake up, I remind myself of that. My mother has her retirement now, though it's not what she thought it would be. She's in a smaller apartment, with fewer friends and less family around. I think she's lonely, but she doesn't say much about it. We've made peace, but I don't think she'll ever forgive me for what I did to the house sale, for making her face the truth about Derek. She still loves him, she always will. But she sees me now, too. And that's all I ever wanted. Maybe that's the real story here. It's not about the car or the room or the property. It's about being seen. It's about being valued. It's about knowing that you're not just the one who gives, but the one who matters. I don't know if Derek will ever learn that lesson. I don't know if my mother fully understands it. But I do. And that's enough.